Ja, geht aber. Yeah, that looks like it is actually still working, even though we haven't been using it for quite a while. Yeah, a very, very warm welcome to a freshly squeezed and brand new episode of PAoA on Air. I'm still Bastian, and with me, I still do have Dominique. So that didn't change.
Hello.
Yeah, welcome back after the a bit more extensive than initially planned summer break. I think this is what we should probably officially call it.
Summer break.
Let's call it summer break. I think that's probably what comes closest to it, right? I mean, yeah, let's just not go there, I would say. At least we're back. I'm really excited actually to be back. I kind of missed it a bit, I have to say.
Me too. Yeah, definitely. Good to be back. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in our defense, right? First, I kind of was on vacation that literally felt like a lifetime ago, and then it was kind of, I almost said post-Corona madness, but I think that would say that we are through. I think that's another discussion, but at least it feels like it, right? So there was an insane amount of pitches and work around that we kind of somehow had to do. So no PAoA on air. Sorry for that, guys. But yeah, I guess it is what it is. Dominique, how are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Yeah, feels good to be back. Feels good to be back on air. Yeah, as you mentioned, we had some tough weeks, I guess. So after a lot of sales topics, pitches, onboardings of new projects, and yeah, which is quite good, and I'm super happy about it. Did we go back to a bit more normal, I would say. And yeah, after our first conference last week, so feels good to be back and more.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say that. I had the same feeling, and that's probably one of the topics for today. I had the same feeling last week when we kind of both, I think, went on stage for the first time. I mean, for me was like the first time I think since February actually. I think for you was it even the first time this year, right?
Yes.
I was gonna say, right? We had some virtual. I mean, obviously a ton of virtual events, but like the first time for you on stage. Yeah. How did you like it? Was it good or no? Or
I really loved it. It felt quite weird. I had the feeling that I built something like a distance during that the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 months. So it was pretty strange to be back on stage and to see like in a physical way, like people sitting in front of me. It was pretty hard to get into it, to like, okay, where should I look at and how do I manage when it's not like a conference on a virtual way? So I really loved it, but it was completely different, I must say.
Yeah, it was, right? Yeah, I do enjoy going on a stage by now. I have to say, I guess you kind of get used to it, and then at some point you, I guess, at least it was for me, right? I think you decide at some point for yourself if you do it, or like in a sense of because it's your job, or if you really enjoy it. And for me, it's like at some point I started really enjoying it. So yeah, no, I have to say I missed it, and it's so different from doing, and no offense to anyone, and I understand the necessity for virtual events, and I mean we don't do event, right? But like PAoA on Air is kind of born out of the same necessity. But I would say it's a massive difference. Doing your talk, and there's I think a whole bunch of other things around that, doing your talk in a virtual only environment, or in a kind of a real world scenario, I would say. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it a lot, I have to say. It was good. As you said, very different. I guess we can recap on SMX Munich. So for those of you that were wondering, like, what idiots went on an event like that was, so SMX Munich happened as a hybrid event. It was really well done. So big shout out to Rising Media and the team. I think they did a phenomenal job on that one, and I think it was really good to have something like that back, where everyone else is I mean, I guess understandably so, saying, well, maybe this can or can't happen. I think we still have the SEO day in Cologne, if I'm not totally wrong, where it looks like in similar ways to Munich, with a reduced amount of people up, kind of that are allowed to the venue, that it might happen. But the rest of the events, I guess you all know, I mean, for obvious reasons, had to be cancelled and or moved to a sole virtual solution. Again, understandably so, but this hybrid was a really interesting step, and I would say it kind of can show how you can do it. I mean, so yeah, maybe we give a bit on, we go into that in a bit. Before we do so, how is your reading going, by the way? I recall there was this book situation and we wanted to do this book recap. What is that all about? Do we need to nail some dates, or is that ever going to happen? Maybe 2022 or what? What's the...
Thanks for mentioning that.
You're most welcome, right? I mean, there's no one watching anyway, so it's fine. It's just us.
Yeah, it's still a bit postponed, I would say, or postponed. Maybe very, very low on my agenda and my to-do list.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely didn't have enough brain capacity for consuming any kind of additional information anymore.
Fair enough. So what is high on your to-do list right now? Can you share what you're currently working on?
Yeah, on my to-do list in general, I would say strengthen our team again. I would say so. This is one of my high priority topics. Not like strengthen again, but yeah, strengthen them for the period after Corona, if I can say that. So trying out, so taking the time we have at the moment, so having a bit of additional time, taking it for testing some new things, testing new approaches in content marketing, and yeah, also everything in terms of our merge we had, so everything in the field of team building experience and team building topics, because yeah, I think we already mentioned that before in one of the episodes. I'm not sure such a long time ago, but yeah, like everything in terms of how to make a cross-functional team work. So get the SEOs more into content marketing, or at least getting more insights, and also the same for getting SEOs, content marketing managers, more to SEO perspective to build better products. So this is one of my very, very high priorities at the moment.
Okay, fair. I mean, then it's fair enough that you don't read that much. I guess that's a good enough excuse. So. I will come back to that. I'm not gonna forget about it.
Great.
Potentially
have my weekly reminder here.
Exactly, right. I do it like Outlook. It just pops up and then you just squeeze it for another week and then and then whatever. That always works. Yeah, true. I mean, you were saying, right? So I think we have it's an interesting time, and I was speaking to a lot of people at SMX, kind of observing a bit of the same trend that in the last for us it was last 6 weeks, right? Some said like last 4 weeks, but 4 to 6 weeks either way. Things are kind of coming back. I wouldn't say back to normal, but at least we see a very, very significant uptick again in inquiries, again in workload, obviously. So I guess that is a good sign, right? It's a good sign to, as you said, maybe not a normality in itself, but at least it continues to go into the right direction. And I mean, at the end of the day, we can just wait and see what happens in regards to, a wave 2 or whatnot. I think that's a discussion that we probably shouldn't have here, but
definitely,
I guess it is what it is, right?
Yeah,
and we have some exciting hires and projects. So I guess that's also really good, right? So in that regard, I guess that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty curious about the next weeks and months. I think we can see like smaller changes in inquiries and project inquiries we have at the moment. So I'm pretty happy that I see that a lot of more like content syndication or cross-functional and cross-discipline inquiries are there at the moment. So this is what makes me happy at the moment, to see that there's a different understanding at the moment, because I can imagine that it's about efficiency at the moment, so that companies maybe or people start or need to think about or more about how can I make or take the best out of my content, I need to create anyways or produce anyways, right? So this is pretty exciting at the moment.
And maybe even one step back, right? Saying like, how can I kind of make most use out of my budget, right? So where do I allocate that, which channels and whatnot? And I mean, as you have been saying in the past, it's like this isolated looking into disciplines is probably not anymore like the right way to do, right? So yeah, you're right. That's a very interesting observation that we see in terms of multi-channel inquiries. Very true. Yeah. Speaking of, so let's kind of go back to SMX, to SMX Munich. I mean, what was your take on maybe let's start with a more generalistic view, right? Because I've seen, if I'm not totally wrong, I think it was on Search Engine Land a while ago actually, where there was a survey amongst industry professionals where I think it was a roughly, I can't rephrase it out of my head, but it says basically, are you planning to attend any like an in-person event this year, or is that like a no-go, right? So and I think half of them, or even more than half, said, well, no, we're not planning to, right? So I mean, I guess the big thing here is, or there in the survey also, is like it just really, I'm not sure if they didn't ask for it or if it wasn't taken into consideration, either way. But like, so I guess the geographic nature makes a significant difference, right? I mean, as we have been talking about in some of the early episodes, we could really see kind of Corona and the severity, if you so will, kind of going through multiple regions kind of time by time, right? So for us, it was some clients where we had to shut down Italy and then France, and then only a bit later it came to Germany, right? So I think for context, what we probably should do before we go into it, like, I mean, in comparison, and I'm not saying I agree with everything that happens in Germany, and like, let's also not go into the kind of political grounds, but I think overall it seems to work quite okay over here, right? And I think that was also like the first kind of general, I would say, hurdle that the Rising Media team had to kind of go through anyways. It's like, is that even doable, and would you want to be responsible if something goes wrong, right? And I think they kind of took a lot of like careful consideration, and I know also like kind of a lot of advice from like official institutions, if you so will, where they try to ensure that that's the case, right? So I think for like an event in Germany, I can see that it's obviously, or might look a bit strange if you look at that from like a geographic region which is still very severely impacted, right? So I think this is something that we should also keep in mind, that is like the region itself, Germany, kind of is doing quite okay, which is probably a precondition that this was even possible, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you feel? Like, I mean, they did a lot of things. What was your take when you went there? You felt safe? Did you say, maybe not? So what was your general take on this entire situation?
So maybe I must mention that I had like, I would say 3 different roles at the SMX. True. Because I was an attendee. I did a moderation of one track, and being there as a speaker, so was like having different roles. And because of that, I of course got a lot of information before the conference happened, especially in during the moderation briefings before. So we had like extensive briefings about like every detail, and also for speakers, I guess, but I think also for all attendees. So I felt pretty well informed before, and also while being there. So there was nothing I really missed. I felt safe at every point, I must say. So of course there were not that like side events they have in the conferences before, or when the normal time would have been. But being there was like, for me, it felt completely safety. So there was a lot of how is it called? The distance, a lot of distance. in every kind of room for the different tracks, there were like the QR codes at the tables when you had like lunch. Everything was pre-packed at the lunch or like eating food corner or whatever it's called. So I had a very good feeling. I was not that sure how that would work out while going there to Munich. Was like, okay, wow, that feels so weird to be on my way to the first conference, like live conference since months. So I was pretty excited how it will be. But I must say they did as you mentioned, like a great job in the whole organization stuff. So but also what's also good, or the good part, even if we had like the hygienic distance during the whole time, it was also or still possible to do like the networking part. So from my side, I had a very good experience over there.
And I think you actually missed even one role, right? Because you even had a fourth, because we also had a booth, and you were doing some booth or stand duty, I think on the second day, right? So
it was on the second day, yes.
Yeah, second. So even, I mean, obviously, even, I mean, some advertisers pulled out. I can see that also, though, even though I think, well, maybe, we kind of into this entire situation together. So, well, I mean, it was clear that it obviously is less people there just due to the restrictions, right? So if we go one step back, right? So what SMX decided to do was a hybrid event, right? So hybrid event meant that there was a certain limitation to people being allowed on the ground, and you said that already, and I agree. I felt pretty well informed because there were surveys beforehand, so for capacity planning in general, and then you couldn't just show up, right? You had to pre-register to be there on the ground, even though you had already your ticket from maybe March, or you purchased it or whatever. So I think that was a pretty smart way to do it, is like, see who is actually even willing to come. And I think that worked quite well. I mean, there, of course, the majority that was there were Germans, I think. However, though, I mean, I've like sat in like one evening together with colleagues from the UK and also from Austria and Switzerland. So, I mean, that was still the case. And I think for me, the major thing and the major difference is, like, if you start with the roles, which you kind of said, is like, I mean, as a speaker, the like, presenting is something that usually works really well when you see how the audience receives your talk. And that's the major challenge, I think, with virtual, is that you just have absolutely zero idea. I mean, you of course, right, you prepare and you build your slides and whatnot, and you kind of potentially learn the slides or do the dry runs, and you would probably, depending on what talk that is, you would most likely prepare pretty much the same, right? I mean, you have your routines, and then you would do the same thing. But what's fundamentally missing is jokes don't work. I mean, you can still make them or try to make them, but if that does work, maybe someone chuckles in front of the monitor, but you wouldn't know.
You don't know if it works.
No, right? No, and you can't do any. I mean, this is always a debate. Do you have any audience interaction or no? I think sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends. It depends on the audience, obviously, but also on the context of your talk, I would say, also a bit. That doesn't really work either. And then I think a lot of energy when you present comes from how the audience perceives your talk. So that's entirely missing, and this is really what annoyed the hell out of me. Like, I mean, I've done a ton of virtual events in the last months, and again, I see the reasoning for the organizers. I see also the reasoning for us as a company, but it's just a very, very different beast. And I would say, I would always pick the live stage.
Definitely.
In comparison to doing solely virtual. However, I had a chat just earlier this week, actually, I think it was yesterday, with someone saying that he dialed into SMX virtual. So like that's what the hybrid was, right? So basically they had video streams in a really, really good quality. And then I think Hopin was the platform in the background, similar to what happened in March already. So you could dial in, you had your agenda, you can go like to wherever you want. And I mean, of course, you can do it from the comfort of your home or a meeting room in the office or wherever you were, right? Maybe you were just on vacation and dialed in. So that works, right? And I can, like, if you're really only into consuming a certain volume of information, I can see the charm of not having to travel somewhere, and just not bothering with anything. You get up at 9, you dial into the session at 9:30, and you're done by midday, right? And you just have a very condensed way of consuming some of that info that you really care about, and the rest you don't. And then I've seen on Facebook, I think there were some arguments. I mean, there's always on Facebook, right, where I think someone said, well, yeah, it's way better to do it this way anyways, because like, environmental protection and whatnot. Well, again, I can see the reasoning. I don't see this to be entirely true, though. I mean, what is missing in the entire equation? And you said, well, networking worked. I would agree. The structured networking part worked, and I think also SMX tried this, what was it called? Initially, it was called Picnic, right? But then the weather the weather didn't work out, so it was like done indoors. But there was a plan B, and that, as you said, that worked.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this nonsense for now 20 years or something. I mean, not conferences 20 years, but like been in the industry for quite a while. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the past years is that for me, it's mainly about the network and knowing people and meeting people, and actually networking in a non-structured way, which sounds a bit weird, but I think you just run into someone and then you're sitting in this, like in this case was a speaker's lounge or just somewhere else, right? You just talk about some random stuff, and basically you kind of all of a sudden you're into a topic that's like super interesting, and that wasn't pre-planned at all. And this is also the other thing, right? This is what this kind of virtual thing brings with it. You are more isolated. This just doesn't happen. And maybe that's just me, but those were the two things. So like generally how you don't get the feedback in any way if you do a talk, and then the networking part only works partially.
Definitely, yeah. I had exactly same experience at the SMX last week. So I had my presentation also on the first day.
Yeah.
And it was before lunchtime, so more in the morning, and I enjoyed it that much that on this day, but also the day after, so many people ran into me and was like, hey, I saw your presentation yesterday. I have one more question, because of course in the situation where your session ends, not everybody is able to think through everything and answer or ask the questions. So I had so many valuable discussions even afterwards about different approaches and different questions. So this is what especially in that moment, I recognized, oh wow, I missed that so much, to have just like spontaneous discussions, even if it's about my session or about a session from anybody else, or about, hey, can I sit next to you, or with hygienic distance, of course, but can I sit at your table? Of course. Yeah. So this is what I missed the most during the last months with virtual conferences, and this is the major difference, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably something we should also add, right? I mean, that was also really well done, right? I mean, if any of you watching knows kind of the usual SMX setup, it's like the main stage in room 1 is like this massive kind of theater that goes all the way up, and it's like usually super packed. So that was like done differently. You had like chairs were kind of placed apart. You always had the distance. You could sit. Even if you were like talking to each other, you had like 2 meters and something of distance. So that was really well executed, and it worked. But I can see, like, I mean, some people from the outside, I think it was on Twitter or something, where there were like some photos being kind of posted. It's like, well, this looks so empty. Why would you even do it? I mean, of course, if in that room usually are, I don't know, a couple of hundred people, maybe close to 1,000, if this entire thing is filled up, right, for the keynote sessions. And then if it's only like, let's say there were 400 there, I don't know what the number was. And if it's then even not everyone's in there, of course, that massive room looks empty. That's just the nature of the beast, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think that judgment is entirely correct. And I can see that if you consider both. And I mean, I think what people forget is that, of course, producing a hybrid event also I would imagine, I'm not into the numbers, but I would imagine like with the streaming, with like the massive camera setup and all of that stuff, with a Hopin platform or whatever the platform is, right? That's a quite significant amount of added costs.
Yeah.
So I think producing hybrid events is also anything but trivial in that regard. However, if it's possible, I think it's actually a really feasible way to provide even more choice, right? So if you like, as I said, if you just want to consume certain stuff and you feel like it's worth the ticket, then you go for it.
Yeah.
Or I think that could even be at that point kind of an on-demand thing, right? Where you say, like, okay, there's 5 on the agenda that I want to see. I click them together. I don't know. I get into those, and the rest I don't care about. And for the others, that's still valuable, the networking part. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. Probably depends on the event itself as well. Then like you can go and you can have everything around it. What you said though earlier, I agree. Like what was really kind of sad, not sad, but I mean understandably though, was this that it was a stripped down naked conference, and normally I think the entire conference experience somewhat lives off the fact that you have like a pre-event and something else, right? So yeah, but again, I guess we know why, right? So
yeah, sure. So I think I can live without that. So without the pre-event and without the after conference event,
yeah,
but it compensates the rest, I would say, for like being there, having the discussions during the whole day, and yeah. So that's
what would you say in terms of us having our usual? I mean, we've been advertising and having a booth at SMX. Says not only that one, also like I recall last year we did SMX Advanced and whatnot. So we have been doing this for years, right? What is your thoughts on that? I mean, is that generally a model that makes sense? Is it something that where you think like, well, maybe as an advertiser, that's kind of a dying form of advertisement because no one wants to do it anyways? Is it worth it in times of a hybrid event? So what do you think?
Yeah, hard to say. So I would say in general, it's worth it for still being there. So we still, of course, it was like, let's say 400 people there. So which means like when maybe 5% stopped by at our booth, we didn't have that many discussions, or not that many we would have.
Yeah, significantly less volume. Yeah, that's true.
Definitely. But I must say there were still very, very good discussions there at the booth. We had some situations, a lot of situations where people came by and or stopped by and just saw, okay, PAoA, they do something with online marketing, SEO, content marketing. Okay, what
something.
And we did have something like let's say quick checks, performance checks in a live way. So okay, we have time now. Just come by for 30 minutes. We can check on your domain. We can check on your content or whatever you're doing at the moment on your ads or whatever. So and I think that's basically not really possible without having the live situation. I mean, of course, and you can collect like leads and call them and try to get them into a longer call for a quick check or something like this. But being there in a live situation, because the person wants to stop by, is something which is completely different, because you didn't have like a targeting situation before. So yeah, still great discussions, not that much volume, but still good to be there.
And I guess also a bit more time, right, for individual things to kind of discuss them and just have a chat and see what's going on there. Go a bit deeper into certain topics. So what do you think? I mean, what's the future of events look like for you? Do you think it's going to be I mean, I think on the other hand, what we have seen in the past, right, is the significant amount of solely virtual events, right? That kind of had to, or wanted, I guess for various reasons, to change their model, right? So said, okay, we go fully virtual, and that's us, right? I mean, there are some free events out there that do that. There were some semi-paid events, right? I think SMX ranges more on the premium side of like the entrance pricing or the entrance fees. So I think so what that means, right? And I think this is something that we had a discussion on a bit earlier, or like the other day, where we said, well, there's so much content out there right now, because everyone, their mother is basically throwing out something and running like another virtual event. So I'm wondering, I mean, what do you think? Is there a point where it's just too much of this free stuff and it just
Definitely
needs to be kind of going back to a bit more moderated quality, or what do you think? What's going to happen?
Yeah, so my prediction is pretty much in that direction you mentioned. So I have the feeling that we will, or already have, something like a educational content shock or something, if I can call it like this. Because yeah, as you mentioned, I'm also a huge fan of joining webinars, and also I'm try to read every ebook and PDF I can get into my hands. So it's like I'm trying to consume as much as possible, even if it's just like reading it through very fast. But at the moment, it's basically not possible, and it's not possible anymore to evaluate between the quality, right? Because there's so much over there, and before you had like your 3, 4, 5 different sources where you knew, okay, from that companies or whatever, I receive pretty good content, and now it's like also like very small companies producing great content, but it's not possible anymore to evaluate that. And I have the feeling that it's like maybe the same a bit with conferences, with live conference. I mean, we also had during the last years like growing the industry of conferences, of live conferences. And I think when we talk about like future hybrid events like we experienced last week for the SMX, this is of course super cost intensive, I would say, or I assume that it's definitely more cost intensive than like one or the other version. And my impression is that we will continue having conferences like that, like having the hybrid version, which is of course more cost intensive, but not feasible for also the smaller conferences. So maybe the quality at the end of the day will win, if I can call it like this. So like, of course, higher pricing, but also maybe more experienced speakers, maybe more quality assurance about the sessions you have, because there are already only 2 days. You cannot put there like 100 speakers at the same time.
Yeah, true.
So this is a bit my suggestion over there, that it's about the quality or more quality in the future for live events, because you need to consider pretty clear, should I really do that? Does it make sense for me in a financial way, of course? And in terms of virtual content, it's
And I think also the challenge, right, as a company, like we have the same issue, right? So there's now so much free content out there. So where is our staff attending? Like, where are they going to? What are they consuming? As you said, what's kind of our way, in the sense of being responsible for teams to ensure that there's a certain quality, right? I guess for some of the events, you could kind of blindly check and know, well, they deliver, and there's usually, I would say, I mean, there are always exceptions to the rule, but most of the time, because, well, this is like a no-brainer, that's fine. But with all the free stuff out there, I'm not saying free equals bad, I guess the opposite, but there is always stuff in between, and significantly more than when you have like those professionally run events where you're like, maybe that's not the way I want my staff to do SEO or whatever. So I think this is also a risk, right? So how do you allocate those resources, where they're supposed to go? How do you pick? Do you iterate? Do you cap it? I don't know, right? So there's probably also some things that need to be considered in the future. I mean, speaking of quality, what was your favorite session? I mean, I know you saw some as well. Not all of them. I saw some as well. So what was your favorite of what you've seen?
I haven't seen too much, I must say, because of the 4 different roads
exactly,
we discussed before. What I really liked, even if it was definitely not my topic, was the session from Brad Geddes from Analysis. So he was basically, or wanted to talk about advanced PPC in a new virtual world. So I was like, okay, sounds interesting. Even PPC is not my
strong suit.
major topic.
Yeah.
But he was talking, I would say at least half of the session about how things are changing since Corona and the situation of remote working and remote pitching and also communication in internal ways or also external. It was pretty good to see also there some insights also from the US, of course. That was super interesting. So yeah.
So how did that work, by the way? I mean, he wasn't there, obviously, so he had to, like, he dialed in, right?
He dialed in via Skype, exactly. So that was, I moderated his track, so it was quite exciting how it will work. And it was like I started the moderation of his track and talked first of all to the audience being there in the room, and then was like, okay, but we still have people there on Hop-In and virtual way.
That's quite a challenge, right? So I mean, everyone was somewhat not there, but kind of dialed in, right? So this
definitely, so he was just there behind, let's say, via Skype, and it was funny experience, I would say. But this is also a point as being as a moderator. It's like, okay, I need to talk, or I'm used to talk to the audience sitting in front of me, but without forgetting, okay, there are maybe like 1,000 people at home also watching. So this was quite tricky, but but his presentation was not that surprising, I must say. He talked a lot about like changing your messaging in your ads, of course, from what you want to sell, I would say, over to how you can help your audience at the moment, and
kind of similar to what you said a while ago, right? When we talked about like content and content triggers, where you kind of went more into the kind of the assisting direction. Yeah, makes sense.
Exactly, it's exactly the same direction, and so also to showcase how the company changed during Corona. So he did also showed some examples from like food delivery services, for example, how they changed the way of communication in terms of special delivery or pickup options, or also like for grocery shopping, that they offered something like special shopping hours for high-risk persons or population. That was also super interesting, and the rest was basically about like the communication, internal and external. So not here that surprising, but he talked a lot about using your cameras when working remote and talking to your colleagues, clients.
Go figure, right? Go figure.
Yes. So that was quite funny. And everything in terms of trust your team while working remote, and also leave slots open in your calendar, so do not block everything, for ensuring flexibility, everything around that. So that was quite good to hear from another side again.
Kind of confirms a lot of the things that we've been kind of toying and playing with in the last weeks and months as well, right?
Yes.
Makes sense.
How about you?
Well, I mean, good question. Well, I really enjoy watching Julius van der Laar presenting. He has a really, really strong stage presence, and I mean, he was, as always, somewhat commenting and giving his thoughts and ideas around the current state of the US election, which I guess from Germany we kind of still watch with a bit of distance and a bit of like, is that really happening kind of a thing. But he was going deep into some of the messaging and showing some of the like tools like on Facebook for ad spend, literally to an extent what Paul already did when we were a couple of episodes back on like election output and whatnot. That was really interesting, just because he presents like really, really well. So that, I think, from a presentation point of view, was definitely one of the highlights. I really enjoyed that one. So that was good. Which is another point that I just want to add on, because you mentioned it, and I think this is also, again, maybe a bit of a pro for virtual, or at least virtual and hybrid events, is the higher or potentially higher reach in terms of audiences, right?
Yes.
I mean, we have all been there. You have done it. I have done it. Others have done it. There are just events that are smaller than others, and that's fine, right? But I mean, of course, with the with virtual events, or with the streaming in itself, the entry barrier is way, way, way lower.
Yeah.
So therefore, usually you have way more people watching and dialing in, even though they would have probably not have seen your presentation or whatever for like an on-site event. So, therefore you could argue that, you have more kind of viewers on I don't know, your slides or your contact info, however you measure your success, if you do, right? On the downside, and this is something that where I think it's up to discussion, or probably depends on what you are trying to achieve with your presentation, is that when you're not there in person, as you said, you don't have this follow-up discussions, which usually lead one to the other. But someone needs to write an email or message you on Twitter or wherever. And that entry barrier is also there, right? So you have to go, you have to write an email. We all get like way too many emails a day anyways.
Yeah.
So like talk to you quickly in person and get my point over and maybe ask for your slides. Ball's in your court, right? If not, well, I have to send this message. It takes time. I forget about it. So I can see both sides of the argument there, which is why I'm still thinking that I would imagine next year, at least 2021, we might be seeing some more of those hybrid events, I guess, out of necessity, because we can't go back to a full normal. Some regulations won't allow that. Some geographic regions won't allow that. As sad as I am about it, but I'm quite sure that we won't see some of our beloved friends and colleagues from the US anytime soon, given the restrictions that we all face.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, at least for that, as you said, like the dial in and then restream, this kind of thing might be something that's going to be around for a while. And I guess then it's just a matter of how that's supposed to settle in, and what's going to happen in the well, not near future, but maybe like in, I don't know, 12 to 18 months time, right? So I guess out of necessity, we will hopefully at least not have like the sole virtual events, which I'm like, but at least the hybrid ones. I hope. I hope.
Yeah,
so.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is pretty much like my thoughts on hybrid. But as you said, I would have had the same kind of conclusion. I always felt like safe at all times. I also felt that like everyone, and now you could say, of course they do, because they're Germans. I have heard that already. A lot of people, like, or literally almost everyone, respected like the rules that had been put in place for various reasons. So you could see people wearing masks at all time, except for when they were sitting, and that was the only kind of time when you were allowed to take them off. Or there were no queues because of the concept of how they distributed food. As you said, it was all packaged and whatnot. So I think those things, I mean, again, we don't have the inside view, but like, I think what you could observe from the various different roles that we had, or that us and the team had, right? It looked like it went really, really well. So I just hope that also for like an SMX 2021, which I think normally would have happened sometime end of March, or usually happens end of March,
I think.
Very early April, either way. I think next year it's booked for end of March. I just hope that we have kind of the same, at least the same setup, so that we can meet some of you again in person, maybe with a bit more networking. We shall see how things evolve. But I would say, I think from our perspective, it's quite sure that we will be back, because that worked really well. Yeah, and I guess we just miss you guys in person.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Speaking of events, another one that is, well, there's a bunch of events actually today. I don't know what's wrong with today, but yeah. So in, what is it, like almost 2 hours time, I have a webinar which has a very interesting title. So it's titled Technical versus UI and UX, and there's kind of the subline to it is like, do we design and build for algorithms or for humans? And I found that a very interesting topic, and I'm quite curious how that dialogue goes. So I'm supposed to kick it off, and I mean, as always, I have a strong opinion on things. So what's your take? I mean, without spoiling my position. So if someone tells you, like, is it like a tech SEO or technical versus UX, is it still a versus, or is it not? Or where do you see those two things? Are they kind of getting more together? Are they getting more kind of apart? What do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's surprising, but I think the answer is pretty clear. Like going together even more, or must go hand in hand. I would say. I do not know exactly the outline or what you've planned for today, but when the
I don't know either yet, but I have 2 more hours, right? So that's fine.
That's perfect. But when the question is like technical SEO versus like UX, it's like my first question would be, where does the question comes from? Because like why is there a versus, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I agree. I think historically, though, you could have argued that there was always this debate and discussion between SEOs and then, of course, UX designers and potentially even like IT people, where everyone had a bit of a different stance on what a website should do. You could say, well, if it works for Google, then that's fine. It doesn't need to be working for users, or that at least probably like 5 years back, you would have said, well, that's fine. And then, I guess Google just got a bit smarter. So maybe it's not, as you said, it's maybe not the versus anymore. Maybe it's coming more together. But what is the position? What should you do first? What should you do last? So I think, so if you are interested in that, that might be an interesting dialogue. So I put it on my Twitter later. So it's 7 p.m. German time, and I think then it's also what was it?
Who will join you during the?
That is a very good question. I'm well prepared, as you can see. So Viola is joining from Flow SEO, and then there's 2 more ladies actually joining the stream.
Like a panel discussion more.
Yeah, it's kind of exactly. So there's I believe Jess, and I sadly forgot the last name, but so we have 2 people from like the SEO camp kind of, and 2 from UX UI, which I think is meant to be an interesting debate, I would imagine. So I have the honor to kick it off, and then we shall see how that evolves. But yeah, we're set for an hour, and it's hosted by SEMrush. So I would imagine that shall spark an interesting discussion.
Interesting, yeah, definitely. Maybe you can give us a small recap next week.
I will. Yeah, I can. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I probably can like share the slides after, and then we can just have a bit of a discussion on that. But as you said, I think there's strong signs for things coming a bit more together with Google's Core Web Vitals and some other things that where I kind of think it points more towards like UX playing a more and more significant role. I mean, it always had to an extent, but I think it now becomes a bit more official, if you so will. So so we shall see how that goes. I'm quite curious. And I think then also it's like the next event then is at, when is it, 9 p.m. today, German time, if I'm not wrong?
I think it's 9 p.m., yes.
We have the Global Search Awards, actually. So it's, I think I spent my next hours here in some various Zoom and other video platforms, which is going to be interesting. But yeah, so Global Search Awards are up as well. They will be live streamed. So
fingers crossed.
Yeah, cross your fingers. We are up for a crazy amount. I think 12
yes.
things on the shortlist. Yeah, so that shall be good as well. That's probably also a discussion for one of our future episodes to see and talk a bit about why we think awards actually do make sense, how we approach that and whatnot. So that might be something that we should put on the agenda as well. I think final housekeeping note that I had still on my list, we decided, as you might have figured by now, it's Tuesday and not Monday. We decided to move things to a Tuesday. So I hope and we hope you don't mind. Any negative feedback is always welcome. But other than that, I mean, you can send it. It's not that we just might still come back on the Tuesday, right?
I think so. Depends.
It depends. Okay, let's leave it open.
Depends on the feedback.
Let's say it depends. But we are planning to come back from now on Tuesday. same time, so around-ish 4 p.m. German time, 5
Yes.
UK. So that should be that's the new plan at least. That said, Dominique, any wise final closing remarks that we have or that you have, or are we just leaving it for today?
I think that's it for today. Now we've been away for a few weeks. Please, let us there your feedback and maybe also like suggestions or what you would like us to talk about during the next weeks. I think we are planning at the moment which kind of topics we should touch on the next weeks. So if there is something, please let us know. And I think
comments, Twitter, email, whatever you prefer. You can DM us directly. Dominique is on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. You can just send it to the PAoA handle. Whatever you like works. That said, we are off for this week. Thanks for dialing in. It was fun and good to be back. So yeah, see you all
next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.